Hey guys, tonight we are going to do something extremely slow. We aren't going to a battlefield, and we aren't running from a volcano. We are going to watch paint dry, literally. But this isn't just any paint. We are traveling back to Florence in the 1400s, climbing up a shaky wooden scaffold, and standing nose with a wet plaster wall. We are going to witness the chemical miracle of bone fresco, true fresco. It's a race against time where the wall is alive, hungry, and waiting to eat the color you feed it. But be warned, if you mess up, you can just paint over it. You have to take a hammer and smash the wall down. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment below and let me know, what city are you in right now? And what time is it there? And if you have ever tried to fix a mistake and only made it worse, leave a paintbrush emoji in the comments. So I know I'm not alone now. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let us ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine you are standing in the nave of a half-finished chapel. It is cold. The stone floor leaches the warmth right out of your boots. It's early morning, probably 4 a.m., because fresco painters have to chase the daylight. The air smells damp, dusty, and distinctively alkaline. That is the smell of lime, not the fruit, but calcium hydroxide, the stuff that burns your skin if you touch it wrong. You look up. Towering above you is a wooden scaffold that looks like it was built by a drunk carpenter. It creaks, it groans. It is held together by ropes and prayer. You have to climb it. You are an apprentice, a garzone. You are the lowest rung on the artistic ladder. Your job is to paint the face of Jesus. Your job is to make sure the wall is wet enough for the master to do it. You scramble up the ladder. The wood is slippery with plaster dust. You reach the top platform about 20 feet in the air. You are face to face with a rough, gray brick wall. This is the canvas. But you can paint on brick, you have to dress it. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. The layers. A fresco isn't just one layer of plaster. It is a sandwich. The first layer, the one you applied yesterday, is called the oricio. It is rough, coarse, and full of river sand. It looks like a bad sidewalk. But today, you are applying the final layer, the intonaco. This is the skin. It is made of the finest lime putty and marble dust. It is smooth as silk and white as snow. You reach into a bucket. The plaster is cool and heavy, like thick yogurt. You slap it onto the wall, splat. You smooth it out with a trowel. But here is the catch. You can cover the whole wall. You can only cover the exact amount of space the master can paint in one single day. This is the giornata, literally a day's work. If you plaster too much, it will dry before he gets to it, and the paint won't stay. If you plaster too little, he runs out of room. You have to estimate, can he paint 3 angels today, or just one big wing? You smooth out a patch about the size of a coffee table. The clock has started, right now. That patch of plaster is thirsty. It is a chemical sponge waiting to drink. But it won't wait forever. In about 8 hours, a chemical door will slam shut, and no amount of pleading will open it again. You look down from the scaffold. The master arrives. He looks grumpy. He is wearing a cap covered in paint splatters. He climbs up. He checks your plaster. He touches it with his thumb. Too wet, he grumbles. We wait. So you sit there, dangling your legs off the scaffold, watching the wall. You are watching water evaporate. It sounds boring, but to a fresco painter, this is the most tense moment of the day. You are waiting for the golden hour. The moment the plaster is firm enough to hold a brush stroke, but wet enough to absorb the pigment. While you wait, you look at the lime pit down in the courtyard. This leads to a niche, chemical detail, the aging of lime. You can just buy lime at Home Depot and use it. Renaissance lime had to be slaked, mixed with water, and then left in a pit for years. Pliny the Elder wrote that good lime should be aged for at least 3 years. The best stuff was aged for 10. Why? Because fresh lime is hot. It is caustic. If you put fresh lime on a wall, it will blister and pop months later, destroying the painting. The lime you are using today was probably mixed by an apprentice who is now a grown man working in another city. You are painting on time itself. The master touches the wall again. It feels cool and damp, but not sticky. It is ready, he says. He picks up his brush. The race begins. While the master mixes his paints, tapping his brush against the side of a wooden bowl, your mind drifts back to where this white stuff came from. You are looking at the smooth, creamy plaster on the wall, but you remember the pit. To understand Fresco, you have to understand the violence that birthed it. Let us climb down the scaffold in our minds and walk out to the back of the workshop near the riverbank. There is a fenced-off area there. It is the most dangerous place in the entire studio. It is the lime pit. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact. The exothermic reaction, the white paste you are spreading, is just mud. It starts as quicklime, calcium oxide. This is limestone that has been roasted in a kiln at 900 degrees Celsius until it glows red and loses all its carbon dioxide. When it comes out of the kiln, it looks like harmless white stones, but it is thirsty, violently thirsty. When you throw these stones into a pit of water to slake them, a chemical war begins. Cal plus H2O equals Ca. O plus C8O sim plus heat. It doesn't just get warm, it boils. The water churns and spits, steam hisses into the air. The temperature can shoot up to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, 150 degrees Celsius, instantly. If you are the apprentice tasked with stirring the pit, you have to wear thick leather gloves and wrap a cloth around your face. If a drop of that boiling white soup splashes into your eye, you are blind. If you fall in, you don't just drown. The flesh is chemically stripped from your bones. You literally dissolve. You remember standing there, stirring the bubbling cauldron of white sludge with a long wooden pole. It felt like you were cooking for a giant. This process turns the rock into slaked lime, calcium hydroxide, or Bianco di San Giovanni. But you can't use it yet. It's too hot. It's too angry. You have to let it sleep. This leads to a niche, architectural detail, the pop-out phenomenon. Why do you have to age it? Because the roasting process in the kiln is imperfect. Sometimes the center of a limestone rock doesn't get fully cooked. It stays raw. If you use this fresh lime paste on a wall immediately, those tiny, raw pebbles of quicklime are hidden inside the plaster. Months later, as the wall absorbs moisture from the air, that tiny pebble finally wakes up. It reacts. It expands. Pop! It explodes outward, blowing a crater the size of a coin right through the face of the painting. Imagine the master spends 3 weeks painting the perfect nose of an angel. And 6 months later, pop, the nose explodes. You would be fired, or beaten, or both. So, you age the lime. You leave it in the pit, covered with sand and water, for months or years. This ensures every single molecule has reacted and calmed down. It turns the lime from a gritty soup into a buttery, smooth putty that feels like cream cheese. This brings us to a massive academic controversy: the Roman standard versus Renaissance reality. How long did they actually wait? Campa, the classicists, cites Vitruvius and Pliny. The ancient Romans had laws stating lime had to age for 3 years. If a contractor used lime younger than 3 years, they could be sued. This camp argues that the Renaissance masters, obsessed with Rome, followed this rule religiously. Camp B, the economic historians, argues that this is a fantasy. Storing lime for 3 years is expensive. You have to dig pits, guard them, and keep them wet. In the boomtown of 15th century Florence, where churches were going up on every corner, did they really wait 3 years? Modern chemical analysis of some Renaissance frescoes suggests No. Some samples show traces of magnesium and unhydrated particles that suggest a much shorter aging period, maybe 6 months to a year. It seems that even Michelangelo might have been at the mercy of a supply chain that cut corners. The ideal was 3 years. The reality was, as long as we can afford. You look at the lime on your trowel. It is cold now. It is unctuous and fatty. Gracello. It sticks to the tool like peanut butter. It has been tamed. You spread it on the wall. The smell is distinctive. It's earthy, clean, and alkaline. It smells like a cave. But before you put this smooth intonaco layer on, you had to do the heavy lifting yesterday. You look at the rough gray layer underneath, the Oricio. This was the scratch coat. You remember mixing that yesterday. It wasn't smooth lime. You mixed the lime with coarse river sand, and maybe even some hemp fibers, or straw to hold it together. You had to throw it at the wall. Literally. You didn't spread it gently. You took a hawk full of mortar and whipped it against the bricks. Thwack. You needed the force to drive the mortar into the cracks of the bricks. Then, while it was still wet, you scratched it up. You used a jagged tool to carve swirls and lines into the surface. Why? To give it tooth, to give the next layer something to grab onto. You realize that a fresco is an architectural structure. It is just paint on a surface. It is the surface. The wall, the rough scratch coat, the smooth lime putty, and the paint. They are all fused into a single petrified organism. The master is getting impatient. He is testing the surface you just smoothed. He nods. It is holding, he says. The water has evaporated just enough. The surface is no longer shiny and wet. It is matte and damp. It is time for the drawing. But the master is going to freehand it. He isn't going to guess. He has a giant piece of paper in his hand. It is full of tiny holes. He is about to use a bag of coal dust to transfer a ghost onto the wall. Let's hit pause on the master's brush for a second. To truly understand why he is so nervous right now, you have to understand what is hiding underneath that smooth, creamy layer of white plaster you just laid down. Your shoulders are aching today. A dull, throbbing pain that radiates down your arm. That pain is a souvenir from yesterday, or maybe a week ago. That was Oricio Day. Before the delicate white skin in tonico goes on, the wall needs a muscle layer. You remember mixing the Oricio. It wasn't the smooth, buttery lime putty you used today. It was a coarse, gritty beast. You mixed the lime with river sand, not fine sand, but rough stuff, full of pebbles and grit. And you didn't gently spread it. You threw it. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the percussive application. If you gently smear mortar onto a vertical brick wall, gravity will eventually pull it down. It might look fine for a year, but then it will delaminate. Peel off to make it stick for 500 years. You have to drive the air out. You have to force the mortar into the microscopic pores of the bricks. So, you took a hawk, a flat board full of the heavy gray sludge. You wound up like a baseball pitcher. Thwack, you slammed it against the wall. Thwack, thwack. It is violent work, you aren't. An artist. You are a human cement gun. Then, while it was still wet, you took a jagged tool and scratched it up. You carved swirls and crosshatches into it. This is why it's called Oricio, from arricchire, to curl or roughen. You are creating a Velcro surface for the next layer to grip. But here is the magical part. After the gray rough coat dried, the master came up. He didn't have a piece of paper. He had a pot of red paint and a brush. He painted the entire scene directly onto the rough gray wall. This is the synopia. This leads to a niche, geopolitical detail. The red earth of Turkey. The pigment he used is a specific iron-rich earth color called Sinopor, named after the city of Sinop on the Black Sea coast of Turkey. In the ancient world, this was the capital of high-quality red ochre. The master sketched the angels, the clouds, and the saints in this rusty red color, right on the rough plaster. It was a full-scale rehearsal. It allowed him to step back and say, that angel's head is too big, and fix it before the real painting began. But now, look at what you have done today. You took your bucket of white intonaco, the smooth layer, and you plastered over the synopia. You buried the drawing. You covered the master's work with a blank white sheet. Why? Because you can paint on the rough gray stuff. You need the smooth white stuff, but now, the guide is gone. The wall is blank. How does the master know where to paint the nose? If he guesses and puts the nose 2 inches to the left, the whole composition fails. This brings us to a massive academic controversy: the synopia versus cartoon shift. For a long time, art historians wondered why we find so many synopias in the early Renaissance Giotto's time, but almost none in the high Renaissance Michelangelo's time. Campa, the paper economics school, argues it was about the price of paper. In 1300, paper was a luxury. You could afford to draw a 20-foot angel on paper, so you drew it on the wall, synopia. By 1500, paper mills were common. Paper was cheap, so artists started drawing full-scale plans on paper, cartoons in the studio, then transferring them to the wall. Camp B, the artistic control school, argues it was about complexity. A synopia is loose and sketchy. A cartoon is precise. As art became more realistic and perspectively complex, you could just wing it on the wall. You needed a blueprint. The master is standing there holding a giant roll of paper. This is the cartoon. Literally, big paper. He has abandoned the old synopia method. He has embraced the new technology. He does need to see the red drawing underneath. He has the plan in his hands. But how do you get the drawing from the paper onto the wet, soft plaster without tearing it? You can press hard with a pencil. You gouge the lime. You need a ghost. You need a bag of soot. The master hands you the paper. It is covered in thousands of tiny pinholes. Hold it steady, he commands. And Dawn, sneeze. You are holding your breath. Your arms are trembling slightly as you hold the giant sheet of paper, the cartoon, against the wet plaster wall. The paper is heavy, thick, and smells of the studio. The master steps forward. He is holding a small linen bag filled with charcoal, dust, or powdered black chalk. This is the spolvero, literally, dusting. He dabs the bag against the paper. Poof, poof, a fine cloud of black dust explodes with each hit. He follows the lines of the drawing, but he isn't tracing them. He is forcing the dust through the paper. Before he brought the cartoon here, the apprentices spent days using a needle to poke thousands of tiny holes along every single line of the drawing. The charcoal dust flies through these pinholes and lands on the wet, sticky white plaster underneath. Careful, he mutters. If you shift the paper, the nose will have 2 outlines. You freeze. Your muscles burn, he finishes. You gently peel the paper away, and there it is. A ghost. A perfect dotted line of black dust on the white wall. It looks like a connect-the-dots puzzle for giants. The face of the angel is there, floating in dust. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact: the indentation alternative. Not everyone used the dust bag. Some artists, like Raphael or sometimes Michelangelo, used a stylus. They would hold the paper against the wall and trace the lines with a hard point, pressing just hard enough to leave a groove in the wet plaster. This creates a physical incision. Art historians today love this. They can shine a raking light on a fresco and see the grooves. Here is where he pressed hard. He was confident. But the dust method, spolvero, is more delicate. It duns. Scar the surface. It leaves the plaster pristine. But now, a new problem arises. The master looks at the dotted line. He looks at the wall. He looks at the sky through the window. The sun is rising. The heat is coming. The plaster is starting to set. He has maybe 6 to 8 hours before the intonaco turns into stone. If he doesn't finish this section, this giornata, Before the chemical door shuts, the paint one, T-stick, it will flake off in 10 years. He has to paint fast, and he has to paint with water. This leads to a niche, chemical reality. The fake paint in oil painting, the pigment is suspended in oil. The oil is the glue. In Fresco, there is no glue. The master dips his brush into a pot of ultramarine blue. It is tea paint. It is just blue powder mixed with plain water. If you painted this on dry paper, it would just brush off as soon as the water evaporated. But on wet lime, the water carries the blue particles into the plaster. They sink deep into the matrix of the lime. As the lime dries, it forms a crystal lattice, calcium carbonate. On top of the pigment, the wall literally grows a glass skin over the color. The painting is E.T. on the wall. It is in the wall. But before the master paints the rosy cheeks of the Virgin Mary, he does something strange. He dips his brush into a pot of ugly, greenish-brown sludge, and he paints her entire face green. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the Verdaccio Foundation. Why Green Campa, the optical physicists, argues that human skin is translucent. If you paint pink directly on white, it looks flat and chalky. But if you paint pink over green, the complementary colors interact. The green absorbs certain wavelengths, making the pink on top look vibrant, deep, and alive. It mimics the veins under the skin. Camp B, the Ruin Watchers, argues that this technique is a disaster in the long run. Over 500 years, the pink top layer often fades or rubs off, especially if it was painted secco, dry. When the pink vanishes, the green underpainting is revealed. This is why so many Renaissance figures in ruined frescoes look like zombies or Martians. Their humanity has evaporated, leaving only the structural green foundation. Are we seeing what the artist intended, or are we seeing the skeleton of the painting? The master works feverishly. He lays down the green Verdaccio. He waits 5 minutes for it to sink in. Then he picks up the red ochre. He glazes it over the green. Suddenly, the face transforms, the green disappears, and a warm, glowing flesh tone emerges. It is magic, but he can stop to admire it. He checks the edge of the plaster patch. It is starting to turn white. The crust is forming. "More water," he yells. You spray a fine mist of water onto the edges to keep them open. He is fighting the air itself. The carbon dioxide in the room is trying to turn his canvas into limestone before he is done, and then he reaches for the small precious pot. The ultramarine, he hesitates. This blue powder costs more than your life. It is ground lapis lazuli from the mines of Badakhshan, modern Afghanistan. It has traveled thousands of miles. He can waste a grain, and more importantly, lapis hates lime. If you paint it too early, the lime eats the blue color and turns it gray. If you paint it too late, it doesn't stick. He has to hit a microscopic window of time. He loads the brush. He holds his breath. This is the gamble. You are holding a small ceramic bowl filled with a powder, so blue it hurts your eyes. It vibrates. It looks like someone ground up the twilight sky and put it in a pot. This is ultramarine. Real, genuine ultramar from beyond the sea. It comes from a single mountain range in Afghanistan, Sar-i-Sang. It was mined, carried by donkeys along the Silk Road, shipped across the Mediterranean, and ground by hand in a mortar for weeks until it became this dust in 15th century Florence. This powder is literally more expensive than gold leaf. If you sneeze right now and blow this powder away, the master will likely sell you to a galley ship to recoup the loss. He dips the brush. He is painting the Virgin Mary's robe, but he is sweating. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the contractual blue clause. Because this pigment was so insanely expensive, it wasn't included in the painter's standard fee. It was itemized separately in the contract. The patron, the rich banker or duke paying for this, would buy the blue himself and hand it to the painter. weighing it before and after to make sure the painter was stealing a pinch to sell on the black market. The master is painting with someone else's money, and the patron is probably watching from the floor below. But the real pressure isn't financial. It is chemical. This leads to a niche, chemical nightmare, the lime bleach. Lapis lazuli is a mineral. Lime the plaster is a base, high pH. If you paint lapis into very wet, fresh lime, the caustic chemical eats the color. It turns that brilliant, electric blue into a sad, chalky gray. But if you wait until the wall is dry and paint it with glue, a technique called secco, the blue stays bright, but it sits on the surface. It eventually flakes off. This is why so many Renaissance skies look patchy today. The master is trying to thread the needle. He is waiting for the plaster to be semi-dry, a state called mezzo-fresco. He wants the lime to hold the pigment, but not eat it. He lays the blue down. It glows. He sighs. Now, look closely at the surface of the wall. Something invisible is happening. The water in the plaster is evaporating. That's the boring part. But as the water leaves, carbon dioxide from the air is rushing in to take its place. CaO, subrin, plus CO, equals CaCO plus H anti-O, calcium hydroxide lime, meets carbon dioxide, air, and turns back into calcium carbonate, limestone. The wall is literally turning back into the rock it came from, and as it creates these new limestone crystals, it traps the pigment particles inside them. This is carbonation. It is drying. It is curing. You are watching a liquid turn into a rock, locking the Virgin Mary's face inside a crystal cage that will last for 1,000 years. But the clock has run out. The master touches the edge of the plaster patch. It is hard. It is no longer thirsty. It refuses to take any more color. Basta, he says. Enough. He steps back. He has painted the head and the shoulders. But the rest of the wall, the bottom half where the body will go, is still covered in blank, drying white plaster. He can paint it tomorrow. By tomorrow, that plaster will be a rock. You can paint fresco on a rock, so he picks up a knife. He slices into the wall. He cuts along the outline of the shoulder, following the edge of the paint. Then he takes a scraper and rips the unpainted plaster off the wall. Scrape, crash. Chunks of white lime fall to the floor. He is destroying the canvas he didn't use. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the Giornata map, because the artist has to cut away the excess plaster every night and lay a fresh patch the next morning. There is a seam, a tiny invisible scar where day one meets day two. We call these Giornata lines. Art historians spend their lives mapping these lines. They use raking light to find the seams. Why? Because it tells you the speed of the artist. Camp A, the slow and steady view, looks at someone like Giotto. His Giornata are regular, medium-sized. He worked like a clock. Camp B, the manic genius view, looks at Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel. They found that in the beginning his Giornata were small. He was cautious, but by the end, he was painting massive sections in a single day. He was painting with a feverish, athletic speed, covering huge areas before the lime set. The controversy is, did he get faster because he got better, or because he got impatient and stopped caring about the details? Some critics argue the later parts of the Sistine ceiling are sloppy compared to the beginning. Others say they are expressive. You look at the master seam. He cut it at an angle, a bevel. Why? So that tomorrow, when you slap the new plaster up against it, the new lime will overlap the old lime slightly, hiding the crack. It is a seamless joinery of time. He hands you the scraper. Clean the edges, he orders. If you leave a crumb of dry plaster, tomorrow's painting will have a pimple. You scrape. The sun is setting. The light is gone. You are exhausted. Your neck is stiff from looking up. But the master is done. He looks at the face he just painted. The colors are changing. This is the scariest part of fresco. The colors shift. When the paint is wet, it looks dark and vibrant. As the lime dries and crystallizes, the colors become paler. They lighten. They shift in tone. The master has to paint blindly, predicting what the colors will look like in 2 weeks. He has to paint in the future tense. The cheeks are too pale, he mutters. They will dry white. He looks panicked. Can he fix it? Number the wall is shut. If he paints on top now, it's just surface paint. It will peel. He has 2 choices. Leave it and hope he has wrong. Get the hammer, smash the Virgin Mary's face off the wall, and start over tomorrow. He grips the hammer. You hold your breath. Is he going to destroy the day's work? The master lowers the hammer. He does not smash the Virgin Mary's face. He sighs, a sound that rattles in his chest like dry leaves. We will fix it a secco, he grumbles. Tomorrow, when it is dry, you let out a breath. The crisis is averted. The wall is safe, but the mention of a secco, painting on dry plaster, changes the mood. It feels like a defeat. Bon fresco, true fresco, is the high wire act, pure pigment, pure water, pure lime. It is eternal. A secco is, well, it's painting. It's what you do on a canvas. It relies on glue. It sits on top of the stone, not inside it. It is the Photoshop of the 15th century. It fixes mistakes, but it lacks the integrity of the whetstone. The master climbs down the ladder to mix his correction fluids. You stay up on the scaffold to clean the brushes, and as you try to stand up, you realize something terrible. Your neck is locked. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the physical torture of the ceiling. We look at the Sistine Chapel or the soaring domes of Florence and think of angels and divine inspiration. We rarely think of orthopedics. But fresco painting, especially on ceilings or high vaults, is a biomechanical nightmare. You are standing with your head thrown back, looking straight up, for 10 to 12 hours a day. Your cervical spine is compressed. Your arms are raised above your heart, which drains the blood and makes your hands numb. Michelangelo himself wrote a poem about this. He didn't write about the glory of God. He wrote about his misery. I've grown a goiter from this torture, he complained. My belly pushed by force beneath my chin. My beard toward heaven, my brush above, always dripping onto my face. He even drew a little caricature of himself in the margins of the poem, a twisted, gnarled stick figure, painting a ceiling, looking absolutely miserable. You try to rotate your head. Crack. It hurts. But there is a worse pain waiting for you at the bottom of the ladder. You look at your boots. They are covered in dried lime. Lime is caustic. If it gets inside your boot, and it always does, it eats the skin. There is a horrifying legend about Michelangelo, one that apprentices whisper to scare each other. They say that when he was painting the Pauline Chapel, he worked so hard and for so long without taking his boots off that his feet swelled up inside the leather. When he finally sat down to take them off, the boots wouldn't come. He had to cut them, and when he peeled the leather away, the skin of his feet came off with the boots, like a snake shedding its skin. You wiggle your toes. They hurt. You decide you are definitely taking your boots off tonight. Even if you have to use a chisel, the master returns. He is carrying a bowl of eggs. Yes, eggs. He is making an omelet. He is making tempura. This is the secret of a secco. Since the plaster is dry, it has formed a crust. It won't suck the water in anymore. If you paint with water now, it will just run down the wall. You need a binder, you need glue. And the best glue, in 1450, is egg yolk. This leads to a niche, olfactory detail. The rotten saint. You crack the eggs, you separate the yolk from the white. You pierce the yolk sac and drain the sticky yellow goo into the pigment. You mix it. It creates a thick, glossy paint. It works beautifully. It sticks to the dry wall. It allows for bright reds, vermilion, and deep blues, azurite. that would be eaten by the wet lime. But there is a catch. It egg. And you are in a hot church. As the years go by, the egg oxidizes, it hardens. But in the short term, it smells. There are stories of chapels smelling like rotten sulfur for weeks after a fresco was finished. You are painting the face of God with the ingredients of breakfast, and the smell is unholy. The master applies the egg tempera to the Virgin's cheeks. The color deepens immediately. The pale, chalky look disappears. She looks flushed and healthy again. He smiles. He has cheated the chemistry, he has saved the painting. But this fix creates a problem for the future. A problem that will lead to shouting matches in the 1980s. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the Great Cleaning of the Sistine Chapel. In the 1980s, the Vatican decided to clean Michelangelo's masterpiece. It was covered in 500 years of candle soot, tallow smoke, and dust. It looked dark and gloomy. The restorers used a chemical solvent, AB 57, to dissolve the dirt. They wiped it away, and underneath they found colors that were shocking: bright neons, acid greens, pinks, oranges. The world gasped. Michelangelo wasn't a moody, dark painter. He was a colorist. But a group of artists and critics, led by James Beck, screamed, "Stop, you are ruining it." Their argument was about a secco. They claimed that Michelangelo had come back after the fresco dried and added shadows and depth using glue-based paint, carbon black mixed with glue or egg. They argued that the solvent didn't just clean the dirt. It dissolved the secco layer. They claimed the restorers were stripping the final coat off the painting, leaving only the bright, raw underlayer. They said the neon Michelangelo was a mistake, a stripped carcass of the real work. The Vatican denied it. They said Michelangelo painted buon fresco, wet, and the dark stuff was just dirt. Who was right? We still argue about it. But as you watch your master apply the egg yolk to the wall, you realize, if someone scrubs this wall in 500 years, the Virgin's rosy cheeks will wash right off, and she will be pale again. You are applying a layer of temporary beauty over a permanent stone. The master puts down the brush. "It is done," he says. "The giornata is complete. The seam is trimmed. The mistake is covered with egg." He looks exhausted. He looks older than he did this morning. The fresco vampirizes the artist. It takes his energy and locks it in the wall. He climbs down the ladder. "Cover the pigments," he orders, "and clean the lime pit." You stay on the scaffold for a moment. The sun has set. The church is dark, lit only by a few oil lamps below. You look at the painting. In the dim light, the wet plaster glows. It looks alive. It is releasing heat. The chemical reaction, carbonation, is exothermic. The wall is warm to the touch. It feels like a living body. You touch the edge of the plaster. It is hard. The door has closed. The stone has set. Whatever is on that wall now, the mistakes, the genius, the egg yolk, the dust, is there forever. You gather the brushes. You climb down the shaky ladder, your knees popping with every step. You hit the floor. Your boots are heavy. You walk to the door of the chapel. You look back. In the darkness, the scaffold looks like a skeleton hugging the wall. You need sleep, but you know that in 6 hours, you have to be back. You have to mix the intonico. You have to grind the blue, because there is a whole other wall waiting to be fed. And the lime waits for no man. You are sitting on a low wooden stool in the back of the bottega. The workshop. The master has gone home to sleep in a real bed. You, however, are still awake. The oil lamp is sputtering, casting long, dancing shadows against the shelves filled with jars of colored earth. Your arms feel like lead. Your neck is stiff from looking up at the ceiling all day. But you cannot rest, because before the sun rises, you have to turn rocks into liquid. You are holding a heavy stone pestle, or a glass muller, a flat-bottomed grinding tool. In front of you is a slab of porphyry, a stone so hard it scratches glass. On the slab is a pile of rough blue gravel. This is the raw lapis lazuli, and you hate it. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the pastello extraction method. Most pigments are easy. You take red earth ochre, you grind it, you mix it with water. Done. But lapis lazuli is difficult. It is a rock filled with impurities. Fool, gold purite, white calcite, and gray granite. If you just grind it up and mix it with water, you don't get brilliant blue paint. You get a sad, grayish blue sludge. To get the ultramarine, the pure soul of the blue, you have to perform chemistry. You have to mix the ground-up rock with a strange dough made of beeswax, pine resin, and gum mastic. You knead this blue dough for hours. Squish, fold, squish. Then, you submerge the dough in a bowl of lye, alkaline water, and massage it. The magic happens here. The wax sticks to the gray impurities. But the pure blue particles, they hate the wax. They slip out into the water. You are literally washing the blue out of the rock. The first wash yields the finest, deepest blue, the ultramarine. The second wash is lighter. The last wash is a pale grayish blue called ultramarine ash. This is cheap. You use it for the sky near the horizon or for mixing grays. It is a process that takes days. And if you get the wax mixture wrong, you ruin a rock worth more than your father's souse. You massage the dough. The water turns blue. It is hypnotic. But you have to be careful not to splash, because on the table next to you are the killer colors. This leads to a niche, toxic reality, the palette of poison. Renaissance art is beautiful, but the studio is a hazmat zone. You look at the jar of bright yellow. That is orpiment. It is arsenic sulfide. If you breathe the dust, you get sick. If you lick your brush, a common habit, you die slowly. You look at the jar of brilliant red. That is vermilion, cinnabar. It is mercury sulfide. It causes madness, tremors, and teeth to fall out. And the white lead. It attacks your nervous system. You are grinding beauty out of death. You wrap a cloth around your nose and mouth. You grind carefully. Grind. The rhythm is soothing, even if the dust is deadly. But as you grind the blue, you think about the sky you painted yesterday. You used a different blue for the background because the patron was cheap. You used azurite. This is the poor man's blue. It is a copper mineral, copper carbonate, found in Germany. It is much cheaper than lapis, but it has a secret flaw. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the green sky problem. Walk into the Basilica of St. Francis in Assisi. By Cimabue, look at the sky. It isn't blue. It is a dark, moody, ominous green. Did Cimabue want a green sky? Was it an artistic choice? Camp A, the intentionalists, argues. Maybe it represents a spiritual atmosphere. Camp B, the chemists, says. Number it. It's simple chemistry. Azurite is unstable. If it gets damp, or if the wall isn't perfectly sealed, the copper carbonate reacts with water and turns into malachite. Malachite is green. The sky has literally rusted. Camp B argues that we are looking at these masterpieces through a filter of decay. We praise the moody, dark atmosphere of a painting, when in reality, the artist painted a bright, happy blue sky that just decided to change teams halfway through the century. You look at the azurite jar. You wonder, will your sky turn green? It's a gamble. Everything in Fresco is a gamble. You finish the extraction. You have a small jar of pure ultramarine paste. It glows in the candlelight. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. You cover it with a wet cloth to keep it moist. You clean the slab. You look at your hands. They are stained blue. You look like you strangled a Smurf, but you can tea wash them yet, because the master wants lime white Bianco di San Giovanni for the highlights tomorrow. You go back to the lime pit in your mind, or physically if you need fresh supply. Making white pigment for Fresco is weirdly simple but time-consuming. You take the lime putty, you dry it into cakes, you expose it to the air, you grind it again. It is just lime. But here is the trick. It is lime that has lost its binding power but kept its whiteness. If you use regular lime putty as white paint, it dries transparent. You need the carbonated lime. You grind the white cake into a fine powder. Scrape, scrape. The sun is starting to turn the sky outside from black to gray. The birds are waking up. You have been grinding for 4 hours. Your shoulder is on fire. Your lungs are full of mineral dust. But the jars are full. Blue, red, yellow, white. The palette is ready. You hear the heavy wooden door of the church creak open. Footsteps. The master is back. He looks rested. He smells of coffee or herbal tea, since coffee hasn't tea really arrived yet. He looks at the jars. He nods. Good blue, he grunts. Don, tea spill it. He climbs the scaffold. You follow him, carrying the precious trays. The wall is waiting. The intonaco you laid yesterday is now stone hard. But there is a new patch of rough Aricchio waiting for today. Escote, the cycle begins again. Wet the wall. Throw the plaster, smooth the lime. Trace the ghost, paint the race. But today, the master is attempting something difficult. He is painting a face that is looking down. And to do that, he has to understand perspective. But not just the math of perspective, he has to understand the perspective of color. He has to paint the face wrong so that from the floor, 30 feet down, it looks right. You are about to learn the secrets of anamorphosis and optical mixing. And you are going to realize that the master isn't just painting what he sees. He is painting what he wants you to see, manipulating your brain with blobs of colored mud. You are standing inches away from the wall, holding a spray bottle or a brush flicking water. The master is painting a robe on an apostle. He lays down a stroke of that expensive ultramarine blue. It looks dark, almost black, like deep ocean water. But you aren't looking at the art. You are looking at the invisible war happening on the surface of the plaster. This is the miracle of carbonation. To the average person, it looks like paint drying. To you, it is a geological event happening at high speed. Here is the chemistry. The plaster, intonaco, is calcium hydroxide. It is wet. It is alkaline. The air in the church contains carbon dioxide. When they meet, they fall in love. They react. Cape O2I plus C, O equals cocoa plus HNIO. They turn back into calcium carbonate. This is the same stuff that marble and limestone are made of. Basically, the wall is growing a new skin of limestone over the pigment. The paint isn't sticking to the wall. The wall is swallowing the paint. It is trapping the blue particles inside a crystal lattice. Once this reaction finishes, that blue robe will not be paint anymore. It will be a blue rock. You could scrub it with water, and it wouldn't come off. It is fused for eternity. This brings us to a niche, visual phenomenon, the calcite sheen. As the reaction happens, something strange occurs. The wall sweats. As the crystals form, they squeeze out pure water. For a brief moment, the painting looks shiny, almost glassy. This is the calcite crust forming. It acts like a microscopic layer of glass. This is why true frescoes have that unique luminous quality. The light doesn't just bounce off the paint, it bounces off the white crystals surrounding the paint. It glows from within. You watch the robe. The shine is fading. The surface is becoming matte. The lock is turning. But not every color survives this chemical embrace. The master reaches for a jar of white. He uses Bianco di San Giovanni. Lime white. That stuff you ground this morning. Why? Because the other white Bianca is a traitor. This leads to a massive academic controversy. The negative photo effect. If you go to the Basilica of St. Francis in Assisi today and look at the frescoes by Cimabue, you will see something terrifying. The faces aren't white, they are black. The angels look like demons with dark skins and glowing white eyes. It looks like a photographic negative. Camp A. Generance theory argues that Cimabue didn't know the chemistry. He used lead white on damp plaster. The lead reacted with the sulfur in the air, or the lime, and oxidized into lead sulfide black. It was a chemical accident. Camp B, the Secco failure theory, argues that Cimabue knew the risk, so he painted the white Secco on dry plaster with glue to protect it. But over centuries, the glue failed, moisture got in, and the oxidation happened anyway. Either way, the result is a masterpiece that ruined itself. Your master knows this. He fears the lead, he sticks to the lime white. It is transparent when wet, but dries brilliant white. It is safe. You watch the chemical door closing. The plaster is getting thirsty. When the master touches his brush to the wall now, the water is sucked out instantly. Slurp. The brush drags. The paint doesn't flow. The golden hour is over. The wall is no longer inviting the paint in. It is shutting the gate. Water, the master barks. You flick water onto the edge of the giornata. You are trying to keep the edge wet so it can bond with tomorrow's plaster. If the edge dries out, you get a cold joint. The plaster will crack along the seam. You are the life support system for a dying piece of mud. The master steps back. He drops his hands. The giornata is finished. The apostle has a blue robe. The Virgin has a green-tinted face. But the bottom of the wall is still blank white plaster. It has hardened. It is useless now. He picks up the trowel, scrape, scrape. He cuts away the excess. He bevels the edge. He destroys the unused canvas. You look at the pile of white crumbs on the floor. That was perfectly good lime. It was aged for 3 years. It was mixed with marble dust, and now it is trash. Fresco is the most wasteful art form in history. You throw away half of what you mix. The sun is low. The light in the chapel is turning golden. The colors on the wall are starting to shift. The dark blue is lightening. The wet red is turning soft pink. It is the drying shift. The painting is settling into its final form. The master looks at it nervously. Will it match? He whispers. He is looking at the blue robe he painted yesterday, which is dry, and the blue robe he painted today, which is wet. Right now, they look different. He has to trust that when they both dry, they will be the exact same shade. If he mixed the pigments slightly differently, if the lime was slightly more alkaline, tomorrow, he might find that the apostle's robe has 2 different colors. And there is no undo button. You start cleaning the brushes. You are tired. Your hands are stiff. But you look at the wall. It feels permanent. Oil paintings rot. Wood warps. Canvas tears. But this is part of the building. As long as the church stands, the painting stands. Unless, of course, the roof leaks, or a cannonball hits it. Or someone decides to whitewash it in the 18th century because they hate Baroque art. You climb down the scaffold. The day is done. But the chemical reaction will continue all night. The crystals will keep growing, locking the genius of the master into the stone. You walk out into the cool night air of Florence. You need food, you need wine, and you need to sleep fast. Because tomorrow you have to paint the sky, and the sky is big, and the lime dries fast. The sun has climbed high enough to shoot a beam of light through the clerestory window. It hits the dust motes dancing in the air, creating a solid bar of illumination that cuts across the scaffold. It is noon. For a normal person, noon is lunchtime. For you and the master, noon is the danger zone. You are staring at the patch of plaster, the giornata, that you laid down at dawn. It is about the size of a large shield. It contains the torso of a saint. 4 hours ago, that plaster was a wet, sloppy paste. 2 hours ago, it was a firm, cool, receptive surface that drank the paint like a thirsty dog. Now it is becoming stubborn. This brings us to the mainstream historical fact: the chemical clock. Fresco is not just art. It is a timed chemical reaction. The process of carbonation, turning lime back into limestone, happens in stages. Stage 1, hours 0 to 2. Too wet. The paint bleeds and runs. Stage 2, hours 2 to 6. The golden window. The plaster is firm but porous. It pulls the pigment deep inside. Stage 3, hours 6 to 8. The seizing. The surface begins to form a microscopic crust of crystals. The pores are closing. Stage 4, hour 9 plus. Stone. The door is shut. You are currently in stage 3. The master dips his brush. He is painting the folds of the Saint's robe. When he touches the wall, you can hear it. Earlier, the brush made a soft swish. Now, it makes a faint scritch. The wall is dragging on the bristles. It feels sticky. It is resisting. Every stroke requires more force. The paint sits on the surface for a second before sinking in. It is like painting on drying mud. The master is sweating, not just from the heat, but from the stress. He has to finish the shading now. If he waits 10 minutes, the shadows won't blend. They will sit on top like hard, dark stains. Water, he barks. You grab a large brush or a spray mechanism if you were in a later century, but for now it is a brush. You flick clean water onto the unpainted edge of the plaster. You are trying to trick the lime. You are trying to keep the pores open for just a few more minutes. This leads to a niche, technical secret, the lime water hack. Sometimes, plain water is enough. The master might dip his brush into a jar of lime water, water that has been sitting on top of the lime pit. This water is saturated with calcium hydroxide. When you paint with it, you are adding a fresh layer of binder to the drying wall. It reactivates the surface. It buys you maybe 30 minutes. It is the cheat code of the trade. But if you use too much, it creates a white, chalky haze over the colors. Efflorescence when it dries. It is a risky gamble. The master is painting furiously now. He is no longer the delicate artist. He is a man fighting a closing elevator door. He slashes in the highlights. Dash, dash, he deepens the folds. Swish, he is painting faster than he can think. He relies on muscle memory. This intensity brings us to a massive academic controversy: the speed versus quality debate. Art historians often look at the later works of great fresco painters, like the late Raphael Rubens or Vasari, and notice a drop in quality. The figures look rushed. The details are sloppy. Campa, the decline theorists, argues that the artists got lazy or greedy, taking on too many commissions. Camp B, the material determinists, argues that the medium forced them to be sloppy. As the Renaissance progressed, artists wanted more complex, dynamic scenes with huge figures. To paint a huge figure, you need a huge giornata, but the lime dries at the same speed. So, if you want to paint a giant crowd scene, you have to paint faster. You have to sacrifice detail for coverage. The chemistry of the lime literally dictated the style of the painting. The loose style wasn't an artistic choice. It was a survival strategy against the drying clock. The master throws his brush into the bucket. Finito, he gasps. He steps back, wiping his hands on his smock. He looks at the Saint's robe. It is done. The edge of the plaster is now bone white and hard. If he tried to add one more stroke, it would just streak. You look at the seam. The edge where today, plaster meets yesterday. Dry wall. He painted right up to the line. Tomorrow, when you lay the next patch, he will have to paint the rest of the robe, and he will have to match the color perfectly. If he gets the mix wrong, the Saint will look like he is wearing a patchwork quilt. The adrenaline fades. The silence returns to the chapel. The master sits down on the scaffold planks. He rubs his neck. He groans. The rush is over and the pain is settling in. You look at him. He is twisted like a pretzel. You realize that while the wall is turning into stone, the artist is slowly being ground into dust. He stands up, his knees popping like firecrackers. "My boots," he says. "Help me with my boots." You look at his feet. They are swollen. The leather is stiff with dried lime. You are about to engage in the daily ritual of the extraction of the feet. And you are going to learn why Michelangelo slept in his clothes, not because he was dirty, but because taking them off hurt too much. You are kneeling at the feet of the master. The air in the chapel is cooling down, but the smell of sweat and damp lime is thick. The master is clutching the wooden rail of the scaffold, his face a mask of pain. You grip the heel of his leather boot. It is stiff. It is caked with white dust that has hardened into a crust. "Pull," he hisses. You pull, the boot doesn't move. It has essentially fused to his leg. The sweat from his feet has mixed with the fine lime dust that drifted down into his socks during the day. Inside that boot, a slow chemical reaction has created a low-grade mortar. He is wearing shoes made of concrete. You wiggle it. Squish, crack. You pull harder. The master yelps. Finally, with a wet sucking sound, the boot slides off. The smell hits you. It is the smell of rotting cheese wrapped in old parchment. His foot is red, swollen, and raw. The lime has eaten away the top layer of skin near the ankle. This brings us to a mainstream historical legend, the skin of Michelangelo. You've probably heard the story. Ascanio Condivi, Michelangelo's biographer and student, wrote that the great artist would wear his dog skin boots for months at a time without taking them off. When he finally did take them off, the skin of his feet often peeled away with the leather, like the skin of a snake. It sounds like a horror movie. But to you, the apprentice, it is just workplace safety. Or the lack thereof. There are no steel-toed boots here. There is no OSHA. There is just leather, lime, and pain, but the feet are the least of the problems. The master stands up, rubbing his neck. He cannot straighten it. He walks with his head tilted back, staring at the ceiling, because his vertebrae have calcified in that position. He is suffering from the Fresco hunch. This leads to a niche, artistic artifact, Michelangelo's complaint. In 1509, while painting the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo wrote a sonnet to his friend Giovanni da Pistoia. It was a poem about the glory of God. It was a complaint letter. He sketched a little caricature of himself in the margin. It shows a stick figure standing up, painting a face on the ceiling. The figure is twisted like a pretzel. The poem reads, "My beard turns up to heaven, my nape falls in, fixed on my spine. My breast bone visibly grows like a harp. A rich embroidery bedews my face from brush, drops thick and thin." He describes his internal organs getting crushed. He describes his eyes going out of focus. He ends the poem with, "I am not in a good place, and I am no painter." The greatest artist in history, in the middle of his greatest work, just wanted to go home and lie down. You hand the master a rag to wipe his face. His face is speckled with paint, red dots on his nose, blue dots on his forehead. This is the rich embroidery he wrote about. When you paint a ceiling, gravity is your enemy. The paint drips. And where does it drip? Right into your eyes. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the vision damage debate. Did Renaissance painters go blind? Campe, the toxicologists, argues yes. The paint isn't just colored water. It contains toxic minerals, arsenic, lead, mercury, and lime water, calcium hydroxide. If a drop of lime water hits your eye, it burns. It causes chemical scarring on the cornea. Campe suggests that the squinting look often seen in self-portraits of older artists is just intense focus. It is chronic photokeratitis, welder's flash, from staring at white plaster and getting lime in their eyes. Camp B, the resilientists, argues that the body adapts. They claim the painters learned to paint blind, keeping their eyes mere slits, looking down frequently. They argue that if they were all going blind, the quality of the work would degrade over their careers, which, usually, it didn't. You look at the master's eyes. They are red and watery. He blinks rapidly. The blue, he asks, squinting at the wall. Is it drying flat? He can see clearly. The lime burn is setting in. It is flat, maestro, you lie. It looks a bit patchy, but you aren't going to tell him that tonight. He climbs down the ladder, groaning with every step. Tomorrow, he mutters. We fix the shadows. A secco. You stay behind to clean up. You scrape the dried plaster off the floor. You look up at the ceiling. From down here, it looks effortless. The angels are flying. The clouds are fluffy. But you know the truth. Every inch of that beauty was bought with a spinal cramp. Every smile on a saint's face cost a layer of skin on the artist's foot. The divine inspiration is actually just extreme physical endurance. You blow out the candles on the scaffold. The darkness hides the mess. But as you walk out, you think about what the master said. We fix it a secco. This is the dirty secret of the trade. The wall is dry now. The true fresco window is closed. Tomorrow, the master is going to cheat. He is going to use dry painting. And while it will make the painting look finished, it is the reason why, 500 years later, restorers will be fighting over whether to scrub the wall or not. You are about to learn the difference between a painting that is part of the wall and a painting that is just stuck to the wall. And you are going to learn why egg yolks are the duct tape of the Renaissance. You are standing on the scaffold again. The sun has risen, piercing the gloom of the church. You look at the patch of plaster, the giornata that you laid yesterday. It has changed. Yesterday it was a dark, wet sponge. Today it is a hard, pale stone. You touch it. It is cool and dry. If you splash water on it now, it won't sink in. It will just bead up and roll off. The chemical door is bolted shut. The carbonation is complete. But the master isn't happy. He looks at the robe of the saint. It dried lighter than he expected. It looks thin. It lacks punch. It needs body, he grumbles. Bring the eggs. This brings us to the mainstream historical fact. Fresco secco, dry fresco. Ideally, a fresco is buon fresco, painted wet. The pigment becomes part of the wall. But practically, almost every fresco has some secco on it. Because the wall is sealed, you can't use water as a vehicle anymore. You need a binder, you need glue. The master cracks an egg. He separates the yolk. He mixes it with vinegar to stop it from rotting too fast. And water, he mixes this yellow goo with the blue pigment. He paints it onto the dry wall. It sticks. It dries shiny and rich. It covers the mistakes. It is the Renaissance equivalent of using white out. But while the master is relieved, you feel a twinge of judgment. You have read the writings of Giorgio Vasari, the great biographer and gossip of the era. Vasari hated secco. He called it a vile practice for those who lacked the courage to paint wet. He believed that a true artist should get it right. The first time, painting secco was admitting defeat. It was cheating. This leads to a niche, chemical reality, the flaking destiny. Here is the problem with the egg, or glue, or cassine method. The buon fresco layer is rock. It lasts as long as the building lasts. The secco layer is just a skin of dried egg. Over centuries, humidity fluctuates. The wall expands and contracts. The stone layer moves with the wall. The egg layer, it is brittle. It cracks. It loses its grip. If you look at an old fresco today, you often see weird white patches where the touch-ups have fallen off like dandruff, revealing the pale, true fresco underneath. The master is solving his problem today, but he is creating a preservation nightmare for the year 2300. But there is a cautionary tale that haunts every artist in Florence. The story of the man who tried to invent the ultimate secco and failed spectacularly. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the lost Leonardo. In 1505, Leonardo da Vinci was hired to paint the Battle of Anghiari in the Palazzo Vecchio. Leonardo hated Buon Fresco. He hated the speed. He hated the giornata. He wanted to think. He wanted to blend colors slowly, like oil paint, so he invented a new recipe. He mixed wax, oil, and pitch into his pigments. He primed the wall with a strange resin. He tried to paint an oil painting on a wall. It looked magnificent. For about an hour then, the paint started to drip. It didn't dry. It melted. Campa, the experimenters, argues that Leonardo was a victim of the weather. It rained, the humidity spiked, and the paint failed to cure. Camp B, the chemical realists, argues that his recipe was fundamentally flawed. He tried to fight the chemistry of the wall, and the wall won. The paint slid off the wall like melted cheese. Leonardo tried to save it by lighting massive braziers to bake. The paint dry, but the heat just made the bottom run faster while the top stayed wet. It was a catastrophe. The painting was abandoned and eventually covered up by Vasari, ironically. It is the ultimate proof that in the game of Fresco, you play by the wall's rules, or you lose. Your master knows this. He sticks to the egg. It is a small cheat, not a big one. He finishes the robe. It looks deep and blue. He steps back. Better, he says. But then he looks at the face of the angel next to the saint. He frowns. He tilts his head painfully. The nose. He mutters. It is crooked, you look. It is slightly crooked. Can we fix it with egg? You ask. He shakes his head. Number, the structure is wrong. Paint cannot fix drawing. He looks at you. He looks at the hammer. Get the scraper, he says. Your stomach drops. Secco can fix color, but it cannot fix form. If the nose is in the wrong place, you cannot just paint a new nose over it. You would have two noses. There is only one way to fix a structural mistake in a fresco. You have to destroy the wall. This is the spiccanatura, the breaking. You pick up a heavy, sharp trowel or a small hammer. You walk up to the angel. The face is beautiful. It took him 4 hours to paint yesterday. You place the blade against the angel's nose. Do it, the master says. Crack. You hammer the blade in. A chunk of plaster falls to the floor. The nose is gone. You chip away the mouth, the eyes. You are erasing history with a hammer. You hack it down to the rough Aricchio layer. You create a crater in the painting. Now, you have to start over. You have to mix fresh and tonico. You have to fill the hole. You have to smooth it. And the master has to paint the face again. But here is the danger. The new patch of plaster is fresh. The surrounding plaster is dry. When the new patch dries, it might shrink. It might leave a crack around the edge, a scar. And the color might not match perfectly because the lime is from a different batch. It is a risky surgery. You mix the lime. You fill the hole. The master picks up his brush again. He looks tired. He looks frustrated. Straight this time. He mutters to himself. You watch him paint. You realize that this art form is unforgiving. It demands perfection in real time. An oil painter can scrape off the paint. A writer can delete a paragraph. A fresco painter has to commit. Every stroke is a wager, and when you lose, you pay in lime, sweat, and demolition. The sun moves across the sky. The light changes. The new nose is straight. The master puts down the brush. It will do, he says. He climbs down. You stay to clean the debris. The shards of the angel's first face lying on the floor. You pick up a piece of dried plaster. It has an eye painted on it. It looks up at you. It is a fragment of a masterpiece that never happened. You throw it in the trash bucket. In fresco, there is no draft folder. There is only the wall or the floor. Weeks have passed. The scaffold has lowered. You are no longer working on the ceiling or the high lunettes. You are now standing on a lower platform, painting the feet of the saints and the landscape of the background. But every morning before you mix the lime, you look up. You look at the work you did a month ago. It has changed. When you first painted the Virgin Mary's robe, it was a deep, wet, midnight blue. It looked like velvet. Now it is a soft, powdery sky blue. The red ochre, which looked like fresh blood when wet, has settled into a gentle, earthy terracotta. The wall is bleaching itself. This brings us to the mainstream historical fact: the drying shift. Fresco painting is an exercise in predicting the future. Wet lime plaster is dark gray. Wet pigment is dark. But as the water evaporates and the calcium carbonate crystals form, the surface whitens. It acts like a frosted glass window placed over the painting. It scatters the light. The colors don't just dry. They ascend. They become higher in key, lighter in value, and less saturated. The master isn't tea painting what he sees now. He is painting what he knows it will look like in 2 weeks. He has to mix his colors 2 or 3 shades darker than he wants them to be. If he paints the color perfectly on the wet wall, it will dry into a ghost. You watch him mix a pot of green for the trees. It looks almost black. Too dark, he asks you, testing you. No, maestro, you reply. The lime is hungry. He nods. He applies the dark sludge. You know that by the time the Mass is held next Sunday, that sludge will look like sunlit leaves. It is a magic trick performed in slow motion, but this drying process creates a logistical nightmare known as the pontata. This leads to a niche, architectural reality, the horizontal prison. You cannot build a scaffold for the whole church at once. It would use too much wood. So, you build a scaffold for the top slice of the wall. You paint that slice. Then, you dismantle the floor of the scaffold and move it down 6 feet. You paint the middle slice. Then you move it down again. These horizontal bands of work are called pontate. Here is the terror. Once you move the scaffold down, you cannot go back up. If you look up today and realize, oh no, the angel's nose on the ceiling dried too light, you are out of luck. You cannot fly. You cannot build the scaffold back up just to fix a nose. The painting above you is finished. It is locked in time. It is physically out of reach. You are painting a giant image, piece by piece, without ever being able to step back and see the whole thing. You are assembling a puzzle while looking at it through a microscope. This creates a massive academic controversy, the disjointed masterpiece. Art historians often notice that in large fresco cycles, like the Brancacci Chapel, the style or the color palette changes slightly from the top to the bottom. Camp A, the evolutionists, argues that the artist matured. He learned as he painted, the bottom is better because he had more practice. Camp B, the logisticians, argues that it's just the pontata effect. Maybe the master got a new shipment of blue pigment that was slightly different. Maybe the weather changed, affecting how the lime dried. Because he could see the top and bottom next to each other, he could color match perfectly. The slight shift in tone isn't artistic development. It's just the reality of painting on a moving elevator. You look at the seam where the top pontata meets the current one. The master has to blend the new sky into the old sky, but the old sky is dry and pale. The new sky is wet and dark. He has to guess the match. He feathers the edge. He prays to St. Luke, the patron saint of painters. If he gets it wrong, there will be a visible stripe running across the wall forever. The day ends. The light fades. You clean the brushes. You look at the wall one last time. It is dry to the touch. It feels cool, like marble. The heat of the chemical reaction has dissipated. The wall is sleeping, but deep inside the microscopic pores, the crystal lattice is still tightening. It will continue to harden for years. Carbonation is a long game. The painting will actually get harder and stronger over the next century. It is turning into geology tomorrow, the master says, wiping lime from his beard. Tomorrow we strike the scaffold. Your heart skips a beat. For months, you have lived on these wooden planks. You have slept here. You have eaten here. You have breathed lime dust here. You have only seen the painting from 12 inches away. You have seen the brushstrokes, the mistakes, the seams. You have never seen the picture tomorrow. The wood comes down. Tomorrow the curtain drops, and for the first time, you and the patron and the critics will see if the illusion worked. You climb down the ladder for the last time. You feel a strange mix of excitement and nausea. What if the perspective is wrong? What if the colors dried too pale? What if the nose is still crooked? There is no more spicinettura breaking the wall. There is no more egg tempera. The verdict is written in stone. You are standing in the nave of the church, holding a broom. The air is thick with sawdust and the heavy thud of timber hitting the stone floor. It is strike day. For the last 6 months, the chapel has been a construction site. It has been dark, cluttered with wooden beams, ropes, and shouting men. The painting, your life's work, has been hidden behind a cage of pine planks. But today, the cage comes down. Workmen are up there, prying the boards loose. Creak, bang, you watch as the first beam falls. A shaft of pure, unobstructed sunlight hits the wall for the first time. It hits the face of the saint. You gasp. Up on the scaffold, inches away. That face looked rough. It looked like a map of brushstrokes. You could see the pores in the plaster. You could see the struggle. But from down here, 30 feet away, it is perfect. The distance erases the struggle. The rough strokes blend into a smooth, glowing complexion. The eyes, which looked like blobs of paint up close, now look like they are weeping. This is the magic of optical mixing. You didn't paint a face, you painted a suggestion of a face, and the viewer's brain finished the job. But before you can fully enjoy the view, you have to fix the scars. This brings us to a niche architectural detail. The putlog holes boucher ponte. How do you think that massive scaffold stayed up? It was floating. To build it, the carpenters knocked square holes right into the brick wall. They shoved the main support beams deep into the masonry. Then you plastered and painted around the beams. Now that the beams are pulled out, the fresco is riddled with square, ugly holes. It looks like the painting has been shot by square cannonballs. You have to grab a ladder, a tall, terrifyingly wobbly one. You have a bucket of plaster and a paint pot. You climb up. You fill the hole with fresh lime. You smooth it, and then you have to paint the missing patch a secco. You have to match the color of the Virgin's robe, bridging the gap over the hole. If you look closely at many Renaissance frescoes today, you can spot these squares. They are usually slightly darker or lighter than the surrounding area, because the secco patch aged differently than the buonfresco wall. They are the belly buttons of the painting, the scars of its birth. You finish the last patch. You climb down. The last plank is carried away. The floor is swept. You stand in the center of the chapel. The master stands next to you. He is rubbing his beard. He is nervous. He is checking the anamorphosis. This leads to a mainstream historical fact, the perspective correction. When you paint on a curved ceiling or high up on a wall, you can paint figures with normal proportions. If you paint a normal human on a vaulted ceiling from the ground, they will look squat and distorted. Their forehead will look tiny, their feet will look huge. To fix this, the master had to paint the figures elongated. Up close, on the scaffold, the saint looked like a stretched-out alien. His torso was too long, his head was huge. It looked wrong, but now, viewing it from the floor, the curve of the ceiling and the angle of your eye compress the image back into normalcy. The alien becomes a man. The master lets out a breath. It works, he whispers. He does not look like a dwarf. But where are you standing? This brings us to a massive academic controversy. The ideal viewpoint, punto di vista. Art historians fight over this constantly. Did the artist design the perspective to work perfectly from one specific spot on the floor? Camp A, The mathematical rigorists argues yes. There is often a specific tile on the floor or a spot where the Duke or the Pope would stand. From that exact inch, the illusion of 3D space is perfect. The painting is an extension of the room. Camp B, the moving eye theorists, argues no. A fresco is environmental. You walk past it. You pray under it. If it only looks good from one spot, it's a failure. They argue the artists use distributed perspective, a cheat that makes it look good enough from everywhere rather than perfect from one spot. You walk around, you move from the door to the altar. The eyes of the saints seem to follow you. The architectural columns painted on the wall seem to shift. It feels alive. It doesn't matter if the math is perfect, the feeling is perfect. The master puts a hand on your shoulder. It is good, he says. This is high praise. He turns to leave. The patron is coming tomorrow to inspect the work and hopefully pay the final installment of gold. The master has to go prepare his invoice speech about how expensive the blue was. You stay behind. You are alone in the chapel. The sun sets. The light shifts from white to gold to blue. The fresco changes with the light. In the twilight, the gold leaf on the halos glimmers. The figures seem to step out of the wall. You realize that this isn't just a picture. It is a light engine. It captures the ambient light of the room and amplifies it. Oil paintings absorb light. They get dark in the evening. Fresco reflects light. It stays luminous. It was designed for this specific room, for this specific window, for this specific time of day. You reach out and touch the wall near the floor, where the decorative border is. It is cold stone. It is hard. You tap it with your knuckle. Click. It sounds like rock. The liquid lime you mixed 6 months ago, the boiling pit, the soft paste. It is all gone. It is returned to the mountain. You haven't just painted a picture. You have created a fossil. You feel a strange detachment. Yesterday, this was your painting. You worried about the wetness. You worried about the seams. Today, it belongs to the building. It belongs to the church. It doesn't need you anymore. If you died tonight, the painting would care. It will be here in 500 years, staring down at people who haven't been born yet. You pick up your bag. You are no longer needed here. The scaffold is gone. The job is done. You walk to the door. You turn back one last time. The saint looks down at you. He looks calm. He looks eternal. You wink at him. I know about your nose, you whisper. I know we had to break it. He keeps smiling. He isn't telling. You step out into the piazza. The air is fresh. You have been living in a box of lime for months now. The world feels big, and you realize that while the fresco is dry, you are thirsty. It is time to drink wine. It is time to celebrate. And it is time to wonder what happens to this wall when we are all gone. Because while you built it to last forever, nature has other plans. Oil paintings crack. Canvas rots. But fresco doesn't rot. It waits. And if it survives the dam, and the wars, and the bad restorers, it might just live longer than the civilization that built it. The scaffold is gone. The dust has settled. The chapel has been swept clean of the lime crumbs and the dried egg yolks. It is the morning of the consecration. You stand in the back of the church, squeezed behind a heavy velvet curtain. The nave is packed. There are dukes in silk robes, bankers in red wool, and the bishop in his mitre. The air is thick with the smell of expensive frankincense, a scent that covers the lingering odor of the damp plaster. They are here to see the miracle. The bishop raises his hand, the choir begins to sing, and the morning sun hits the wall. The fresco explodes with light. The blue of the Virgin's robe, that expensive lapis you ground, catches the sun and throws it back into the room. The gold leaf on the halos glimmers like real metal, because the surface is uneven. It is hand-troweled plaster, not a flat canvas. The light dances. It has texture. It feels alive. You hear a gasp from the crowd. The patron, the man who counted every ounce of blue pigment, is smiling. He is calculating how much social status he just bought. You look at the master. He is standing in the shadows, rubbing his stiff neck. He doesn't smile. He is critiquing. He is looking at the foot of the angel, wondering if the toe is too long. But amidst the celebration, there is a whisper going around the artists in the crowd. You overhear two young painters from Venice. They are looking at the wall with skepticism. It is dry. One whispers, it lacks the glow, the depth. It needs varnish, the other says. It needs oil. This brings us to a mainstream historical fact, the manly art defense. By the late 15th and early 16th century, a war was brewing. On one side was Fresco, the Florentine Roman tradition. It was hard, fast, and permanent. On the other side was oil painting, the Venetian Flemish tradition. It was slow, glowing, and luscious. Michelangelo, the champion of fresco, famously insulted oil, he said, according to legend. Oil painting is an art for women and for leisurely and idle people like Fra Sebastiano. He meant that oil allows you to be lazy. You can fix mistakes. You can blend colors for days. Fresco requires athletic discipline. It is a sport. You look at the wall, it is matte. It doesn't shine like a jewel. It shines like stone. It has a stoic, masculine dignity. But the Venetians have a point. Fresco colors are opaque. You can get those deep, transparent shadows that you get with oil glazes. So, some artists tried to cheat. This leads to a niche, conservation nightmare, the Avivamento, revival. Years after a fresco was finished, if the colors looked dull, a restorer, or the artist himself might come back and rub the wall with linseed oil or animal glue or wax. This made the colors pop. It made them look wet and saturated again. It looked great for about 50 years. Then the oil oxidized. It turned dark brown. It turned black. The glue attracted dust. The wax bloomed white. Many of the dark, gloomy frescoes we see in museums today are actually bright paintings covered in a layer of rotten vegetable oil applied by someone who wanted them to look more like Titian. You pray the patron does order you to varnish this wall. Let it breathe. But the biggest threat to your work isn't the critics. It is the worshippers. You watch an old woman walk up to the fresco. She is holding a candle. She places the candle on a stand, right next to the painted foot of the saint. The flame flickers. A thin trail of black smoke rises. It hits the wall, it sticks. This brings us to a massive academic controversy, the patina versus filth debate. That soot is going to accumulate. For 500 years, it will mix with the incense smoke, the breath of the congregation, humidity, and the dust from the street. It will form a hard, gray shell over the painting. Campa, the purists argues. Remove it all, strip it down to the raw plaster. We want to see what the artist saw today in 1450. Camp B, the historians argues. Stop. That dirt is history. That candle soot represents 500 years of prayer. If you scrub it off, you are erasing the spiritual function of the object. A church isn't a museum. It's a living space. The painting should look old. This debate tore the art world apart during the Sistine Chapel restoration. They scrubbed the soot. They found the bright colors, but some people missed the shadows. They missed the mystery. You watch the smoke rise. You want to run over and blow the candle out? I spent 3 hours grinding that white. You want to scream? Dawn. Turn it gray. But you can the painting doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to her. It belongs to the old woman praying for her sick grandchild. She needs the saint to be real. If the smoke connects her to the image, then the smoke is part of the art. You step out of the church. The sun is blinding. You walk to the riverbank with the other apprentices. You are unemployed. The job is done. The wages are paid. What now? One of them asks, throwing a stone into the Arno. We wait, you say. The Duke is building a new palace. He wants a room painted with the gods of Olympus. Fresco. No, you sigh. He wants tapestries from Flanders. You feel a pang of sadness. Tapestries rot, moths eat them, fire burns them. But your wall is geology. You look back at the church. You know that the roof might leak. You know that the foundation might settle and put a crack right through the angel's face, but the pigment is locked in the crystal. Unless the building falls down, the image stays. You look at your hands. The blue stain of the lapis lazuli is fading from your skin. The callus from the trowel is starting to soften. You are healing, but the wall is hardening. It is the opposite of life. You are soft and temporary. The art is hard and permanent. You walk home. You are going to sleep for a week. And in your dreams, you will see the white lime drying. You will see the crystals growing, interlocking, seizing the color, holding it tight against the ravages of time. You have left a mark, and 500 years from now, when you are dust, and your name is forgotten, someone is going to stand in that chapel, look up and say, "How did they do that?" And you, the ghost in the machine, will whisper, "We did it fast, we did it wet, and we did it with a sore neck. We are going to jump forward, in time. We are leaving the dusty streets of 15th century Florence. We are leaving the smell of horse manure and wood smoke. We are arriving in the present day. You are standing in the same chapel. The air is different now. It is cool, conditioned, and smells faintly of floor wax and tourists. A sign says, "No flash photography." A velvet rope keeps you back. But the wall is still there. You look at the painting you helped create. It has aged, it has scars. There is a crack running through the saint's robe. A jagged lightning bolt where the foundation of the church settled in 1650. There is a patch of white plaster where a cannonball from World War II shook the roof, knocking a chunk of the intonaco loose. But the face of the Virgin, the face the master painted in a panic while you sprayed water on the edges. It is still there. It is calm. It is watching you. This brings us to the final mainstream historical fact, the cracklier difference. If you walk down the street to the Uffizi Gallery and look at an oil painting from the same era, it looks different. Oil paint is organic. It is linseed oil and resin. Over time, it shrinks. It becomes brittle. It develops a network of tiny spiderweb cracks called cracklier. The varnish turns yellow. The paint darkens. It is slowly rotting. But look at your fresco. It doesn't crack like that. It doesn't rot, because it isn't paint. It is rock. The chemical reaction you watched, the calcium hydroxide turning into calcium carbonate, created a surface that is chemically identical to marble. The blue pigment isn't sitting on top of the wall. It is suspended inside a crystal lattice. You didn't create a decoration. You created a colored fossil. This leads to a niche, structural reality, the breathing wall. Why has this wall survived 500 years of floods, humidity, and breath? Because fresco breathes. Modern paints, acrylic, latex, create a plastic film. They trap moisture. If the wall gets wet, the paint bubbles and peels. But lime plaster is permeable. It allows moisture to travel through it without destroying the surface. The wall inhales and exhales with the seasons. It is a living lung. By using the old ways, by waiting for the lime to age, by wetting the bricks, by throwing the oricio, you created a system that works in harmony with the environment, rather than fighting it. But looking at the wall, you feel a ghost of the anxiety you felt on the scaffold. You look at the angel's nose. The one you chopped off and repainted. You can see the seam. To the tourists, it is just a line. To you, it is a memory of failure and redemption. You look at the blue robe. It is patchy. The Asseco egg tempera touch-ups have flaked off over the centuries, revealing the pale, true fresco underneath. The cheating didn't last. Only the honest work survived. This brings us to the final academic reflection. The ship of Theseus. Is this the same painting? The colors have shifted. The retouching is gone. The dirt has been scrubbed off by restorers. If the chemical composition has changed and the surface has eroded, is it still the master's work? Yes, because the intent is locked in the lime, the swiftness of his stroke, the pressure of his hand, the way he feathered the wet plaster. It is all recorded in the stone like a vinyl record. You realize that you are looking at a recording of a performance that happened 500 years ago. You can see the speed. You can feel the urgency of the drying lime. You look at your hands. In the modern light, they are clean. No lime burns, no blue stains, but you feel the phantom weight of the trowel. You think about the thousands of giornata, the day's works that make up the history of art. Every square foot of painted wall in Italy represents a day where someone woke up early, mixed lime, fought gravity, and tried to make something beautiful before the sun went down. Most of their names are lost. You were just a garzone. You ground the colors. You swept the floor. But without you, the plaster would have been too dry. The blue would have been too gritty. You are the silent partner in immortality. The museum guard jingles his keys. Closing time, he says. The tourists shuffle out. The lights dim. You stay for one last second. In the shadows, the figures on the wall seem to step back. They recede into the stone. They are going to sleep for another night. They have slept for 180,000 nights. They are very good at it. You walk out of the church and into the noise of the modern city. Cars, scooters, phones, everything moves so fast. Everything is disposable. We build things to last 10 years. We paint with plastic. We delete photos to make space for new ones. But back there, in the dark, the lime is still holding on. It is a testament to patience. It is a reminder that if you want to build something that lasts, you have to prepare the foundation. You have to wait for the lime to age. You have to respect the chemistry. And sometimes, you have to accept that once the wall dries, you can go back and fix it. You have to live with what you made. You take a deep breath. The air is cool. You are tired. It has been a long 500 years. You don't have to grind pigment tomorrow. You don't have to climb the scaffold. The chemistry is stable. The reaction is done. The final set, and so the water has evaporated. The crystals have locked. The chemical door that you fought so hard to keep open has finally gently clicked shut. You can stop worrying about the clock now. The plaster is no longer thirsty. It is stone. It is solid. It is safe. Imagine you are lying on a bed that feels as cool and smooth as the polished intonaco wall. The smell of the lime pit and the sweat of the workshop have faded, replaced by the scent of clean linen and night air. The tension in your neck, the fresco hunch, is unspooling, vertebrae by vertebrae. You have built something that time cannot easily erase. You have turned dust and water into eternity. But you are not stone. You are soft, you are warm, and you need to rest. Let the heaviness of the day settle over you like a warm blanket. The colors are fading into the gray of sleep. The figures on the wall are watching over you, silent and permanent. You have done your giornata. The day's work is done. Drift into the white, drift into the stone, sleep. The story ends here. Good night.